Well, it's been quite a week since the last Gary Neville podcast. A lot has happened in the life of Manchester United. They've lost one manager, they've acquired another interim one, and there's one in waiting, Gary. We've just watched Manchester United and Chelsea draw 1-1. Make sense of the last week if you can, and indeed the last couple of hours.
Yeah, I mean, maybe start with the last couple of hours in the game. I thought that I thought it was a poor game. I don't know what you thought. Disappointing. Maybe with both teams, United just sort of more of the same, disjointed and not really a style of play. Nothing you can buy into or like. You know, there's bits. You see little bits of play, but you'd expect that the team that's had that much money spent on it, that players are going to give you a little bit of a sort of, if you like, combination or a moment or a bit of skill every so often. But I have to say, in terms of sort of like, they look at times like they've never trained with each other. And some of the passing and some of the play is just, it's really woeful. And I don't like the speed of the game. I think that, I'm not going to start talking about, what Manchester United used to do, but there is a way of playing here that you have to adhere to, and that's high tempo, quite aggressive with power and playing the ball forward. And just, I don't know, you just watch him. There's not really a style of play, and that's the reason Erik ten Hag has obviously lost his job. Not just performance, not just results, but the level of performances haven't demonstrated progression. And today, watching United was no different. I mean, Ruud must be watching them at times and thinking, because I'm sure in training they must show stuff. They must demonstrate things that the manager will like, or that Ruud van Nistelrooy would like. But then they come out onto the pitch and it just doesn't look that great at all. Can't score a goal hardly. They scored a penalty obviously today. I think Sanchez and Fofana make a bad mistake. So they get a goal through a penalty, but they don't really look like scoring at times in the game. They're not really compact in defence. They're not brilliant at counter-attacking. They're not a wonderful possession team when you get to the final third. And yet, they're a really expensively assembled group of players. And it's the big job for Ruben Amorim. Job number one has got to be to stop this rot of players coming to Manchester United who were fancied at times before they came because other clubs wanted them as well, and them not being able to achieve the levels of potential that they demonstrated before they signed, or even the performance levels before they signed when they were at other clubs. So the players that he inherits, which he's going to be stuck with for the next 8 months, he has to try and get the maximum out of them, and that's going to be a big job. There's potentially going to be a change of system. There's going to be a new voice, maybe a different level of enthusiasm, because a new manager always brings that, and that could mean that the players start to progress. But I think Kelly said it, or was it you said it at the end of the game? That's Manchester United's worst ever start to a Premier League season. It's been a woeful 10 games, it really has, and the performances are awful, and you cannot disconnect performance from results. And that's why when I look at Ruben Amorim and I think about what he needs to do in the job, I can't even think about winning the title. That's miles away. Just think about getting the best out of the players that are here, the ones that he signs in the future. Get the team to play higher up the pitch so they look more like a compact unit and like the other top teams. I'm not just talking about City, Liverpool and Arsenal. I'm talking about the likes of Brighton and Tottenham, who again are able to push up the pitch and look aggressive and on the front foot. Manchester United's a front foot club. The club of attack. And it's nothing like that at this moment in time. And, it's really disappointing. And, the new manager can't come in quickly enough. I think Ruud's doing a very good job in the interim, but he's not going to get the job. So,
is it just sort of silly romantics like me who are away with the fairies, who maybe don't understand the nuts and bolts of it, who came here today with a very different expectation? I know it's very, very difficult, must be, to be the interim manager. I'm not having a go at all, but there was a kind of belief. I think the stadium wanted to believe that it was Ruud, that it's a kind of sort of nothing to lose week, and it was going to be go out there and enjoy yourself and put on a show. Or is that just fanciful?
It's emotion, yeah, but it's the emotion we all come to the game with, Peter. I always say, if you lose hope and enthusiasm walking across the forecourt, entering into a stadium of a football match, particularly if you're a United fan, you're obviously not a United fan, but that's how it makes you feel, that they're going to deliver today. There's going to be hope, and yet it's the hope that kills you sometimes, because after 20 minutes you realise it's the same old. And you can't explain it. 5-6 managers now since Sir Alex Ferguson, and we're talking about a lot of the same things. Manchester United play like an underdog team at times, where they're sat back at the edge of their own box, looking to counter-attack 70, 80 yards up the pitch. I'm not going to dig Rashford and Garnacho out, but I am. Because they're two players who've come through the ranks. And with that comes I think, some credit. The fact that you're an academy player and you get a level of buy-in from the fans because of that. So there is an enthusiasm towards them. And obviously now they've been in the team, Rashford, for a good few years and Garnacho for a couple of years or so. But when I watch Saka and Trossard and Martinelli, and I watch Bernardo Silva and Foden for City, or I watch players at Liverpool, I watch them all scurrying back and harassing back and doubling up, and I watch a real intent. I've watched Gusto run forward there on that far side in that first half. We couldn't believe how much space he gets. And the first ethic is that you have to work hard. And with that work, that hard work, and look, I'm not saying that Garnacho and Rashford do not work hard, but they can work harder, I know that. And that's in their defensive work, which then I think gives you the reward in your attacking play. I played with the likes of Andrei Kanchelskis and David Beckham, and obviously Ryan Giggs on the other side for most of the time that I was at United. And the work that they put in off the ball meant that the rewards came for the team on the ball. And there's no doubt that the harder you work, the luckier you get, and the more that life goes for you. And I think that's really going to be something that, they think they're working hard, they think they're applying themselves, and I understand the confidence and belief isn't high. They've lost the manager and the team aren't in a good place. I get all that, and I never had to suffer that at United, and I don't know what it's like to play in this era. But we've got to get back to that idea that basically you are all in it together out on that pitch. And Garnacho and Rashford, I have to point towards them today and say I think they can do a lot more off the ball. A lot more off the... I'm not interested in what they do on the ball. Honestly, I really am not. I'm really not interested in what they do on the ball. I'm interested in whether there is a spirit to fight for the team all the way through the match. And I'm not saying they played badly today or anything, but, I watched the other wide players in the league do a lot more than them. And they have no idea how to press. I think they need coaching again. Almost like they need to restart and be coached again, this group of players, because they don't look like they've ever met each other. And it's really disappointing. Player after player has come to United for 10 years and manager, and they've not been able to unlock the door that is just getting a level of performance, whilst I'm forgetting City, Arsenal, Liverpool, because they've had, great managers amongst them. But let's look at Tottenham with Ange Postecoglou. Let's look at Brighton with a different amount of managers that are able to get a level of performance with energy and spirit and speed. There's no speed in the game. And that's just Manchester United. It's got to change, and someone's going to change it one day. I hope it's Ruben Amorim. He's got to get them up the pitch. He's got to dominate and control games in the final third. He's got to get the best out of the players and get them confidence and belief in themselves. And unless those three things happen, it won't result in performances, and it won't get the results, which mean it will have the same ending in 2 or 3 years' time. I'm just hopeful that there is a freshness. There's a like towards the appointment of Amorim, just as there was to Ten Hag. So, I was excited by Ten Hag coming. I'm excited by Amorim coming. Why shouldn't we be? And let's see whether this time a guy can get the best out of the players in the squad, because they look like they need an idea, something to hang their hat on, something to give them belief and confidence. They haven't got that at the moment.
Obviously, we'll talk properly about Amorim in a second, and we must talk about Chelsea too. But perhaps more briefly, a question that needs answering is, how does this week look for United? How can... There's a European game on Thursday. There's another Premier League game against Leicester here next Sunday. What can occur this week that makes any material difference?
Well, I think, today's not a disaster. I think getting a point against Chelsea, many would have said that Chelsea would have come here and won today, and they probably could and should have won if they had played properly in the second half and been a bit more clinical and ruthless with their final part of the play. So I think win the games and do the very best that you can for Ruud, who's obviously filling in. He's lost someone who brought him to the club in Erik ten Hag. It's not been an easy week for him. And obviously you're showing the new manager. The new manager is watching these matches. So I think this is a dress rehearsal for what's going to happen, obviously, after the international break in a few weeks' time, when obviously we have United's first game under Amorim, don't we, again at Ipswich away. So I think, to me, this week is about making sure you're playing for your place. You're playing for that sort of new spot under the managers for him to give you a chance. And just, stay unbeaten. Win the games. Get the points on the board. I mean, the position in the table, where are United after today's game? Sorry, are they 13th?
They were 13th this morning.
Yeah, so is it
thereabouts.
Yeah. So, that's an appalling position to be in going into a November international. So, there's a lot to play for. And And I think, like I say, the interesting thing for Ruud this week is he's obviously being really professional, to be fair. The interviews that I've seen him do in the pre-match build-up to the 2 games have been probably 2 of the best interviews I've seen from a manager in the last 10 years at the club. It's been quite refreshing. Someone with authority who speaks with real sort of like a determination and knowledge of what's going on. So we'll be interesting to see what happens with Ruud, and whether Amorim keeps him as part of his backroom team, whether Ruud moves on and takes...
Would you?
I can see why he would, and I could see why he wouldn't. The reason why he would is because he's got a great knowledge of the club. He's obviously talented as a coach. He's coached at a high level in Holland, and he loves this club. So he's got someone who knows the club inside out and can just keep his eye on things for him. The reason I wouldn't is because Ruud looks pretty bloody good as a manager. Do you know what I mean? The idea of that sort of guy being on your shoulder. Now, Ruud's not that type of person. I don't mean being on his shoulder waiting for him to get sacked, but just the idea of that authority and that presence next to you. You know, if Amorim's very sure of himself, which I'm sure he is, he may say, no, I want someone with real presence and stature that's a club great, but also is a serious coach alongside me. So it'll be interesting. That's an interesting dynamic, I said, during the game.
It's an awkward one. I don't know the individuals involved. You know, one of them, in Ruud van Nistelrooy, is absolutely key. It just strikes me that if, as we learn, Amorim is bringing his own people with him, if he wants Ruud van Nistelrooy as well, he's got to work out kind of what his real job is. You know, he can just be there as a person, but if somebody else is coaching the first team, what's Ruud doing?
It's a good point. They may come to a conclusion where Ruud leaves, but where Amorim does want him to stay, but maybe can't fulfil his aspiration of what he wants to do and his ambition of what he wants to do on a day-to-day basis. You know, knowing Ruud, obviously, as I did as a player, this is a real determined, successful sort of guy who wants to do everything like 100%. He's perfectionist. And the idea that he would just be playing a bit part, you know as an assistant that you're not going to be the main man and you're not going to pick the team, but he would want to be making a serious contribution to Amorim. And if Amorim is saying, well, no, I do the coaching and my number 2 does this and my goalkeeping coach does X, and actually I'd like to keep you, but the role isn't going to be as involved as you'd like, that would be a situation that I could see maybe doesn't work for Ruud. So, yeah, there's a lot to work out. I think that Ruud would need a job that's got a level of seniority with it within the actual sort of club, and Amorim would have to give him that to really want him to stay. So let's see what plays out in this next week or two. But the idea, Ruud looks the part on the side of the pitch. He looks like a manager, and that sounds like a really sort of like quite empty and shallow thing to say, but you know what I mean by that, don't you? And he's managed at PSV. He obviously won a trophy there as well. He really enjoyed his time. He's definite and sure about what he wants. I went over and spoke to him in Eindhoven and spent 2 or 3 hours with him and then really enjoyed it a year or so ago. And I think that, like you say, he knows his pathway, he knows where he's going, and I think that he loves this club. He loved his time here, so I think that he'll need to be motivated by the role. You're absolutely right, and it's an important point that you make there.
Okay, well, Amorim then. We've all been learning about him this week. Some people will have had a genuine knowledge. The rest of us have been catching up fast. We've read about his formation. We've seen his press conferences. He looks a really engaging guy. I mean, if I was a Manchester United fan, I must say I'd be quite excited.
Oh, yeah. I think, look, when a manager loses his job, there isn't an element of sadness because, the fans are very loyal to the managers here at this club, as they are at most clubs, but they're particularly loyal here to managers. They really sort of support them right to the very end. Even when you know it's going wrong, you still get your name chanted and supported. But there's also a level of optimism that the guy that's been being brought in is fresh. There isn't. You're absolutely right. None of us are absolute experts on Amorim, and I'm certainly not an expert on him, but he plays 3-4-3. I actually think that this is not a system that the club has ever really adopted. I think Louis van Gaal played 3 at the back quite a bit, but generally Manchester United have been 4 at the back. However, I actually think this group of players, particularly I think Martinez, De Ligt and the full-backs, even Maguire's played in the back 3 before for England and for his club side. I think there's none of them really stand out as a back 2, and I don't think there's any of them stand out as a pair of full-backs that can really... I don't think you've got a really great back 4 here. So I actually think it might suit them in the short term anyway, the change of system. He plays apparently a high-tempo way of playing. He wants to press up the pitch. That's the key. Can he get Manchester United up the pitch? I asked for the stats this morning, and it was sober reading about sort of how high Manchester United play up the pitch, because when I was thinking about what Amorim needs to do to change the flow of the club, and I haven't got my glasses on, so unfortunately you're gonna have to bear with me. But when I looked at the sort of average start distance of the teams up the pitch, Manchester City, as you'd expect, are number 1, Arsenal number 2, Liverpool are number 3, Tottenham number 4, and Brighton are number 5, and Manchester United are down in 10th. So I think if you want to push your defence up the pitch, which is what I think every team looks to do nowadays, he's got to start with that, because Manchester United quite often have to go 80, 70, 80 yards to score a goal because they're so deep, and they play like the underdog in games. And then the other one was basically possession won in the final third. So possession won high up the pitch where you can really get in and about it. Number 1, Manchester City. Number 2, Tottenham. Number 3, Arsenal. Number 4, Liverpool. Number 8, 9, or whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9th, Manchester United. So again, as for these stats, you know it's right, but you're trying to think, what does he need to do to alter performance levels? He needs to change these 2 things. And the final one I asked for was basically the highest turnovers. And again, number 1, City. Number 2, Tottenham. Number 3, Liverpool. Number 4, Arsenal. Number 9, Manchester United. So all the things that a modern team do, and the very best teams in the league, and the teams that win the league and are in for winning the league, these 3 things are critical to performance levels. Now, obviously, there are hundreds of other things like set pieces and combinations of play and all that sort of stuff that comes into it. But those 3 things I've watched Manchester United over the last sort of 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they have played like the underdog. They've played like a team that basically, is the one that sat behind the ball. Let's try and get them on the counter or score from a set piece. That's got to change. You've got to be a team of dominance. And I mean dominance. I mean dominating the ball in the final third, dominating your forwards and staying high up the pitch. You can play counter-attack from a deep position in certain parts of matches when you're under pressure, but you can't do it continuously, and you can't be 9th and 10th best in the league in those metrics, because the best teams in the league are in the top 4 in all those metrics. So that's what he's got to bring to the club before you even get to the types of thinking around winning a league. There's some really simple performance metrics that need to be met, and they're really important ones. And let's see what happens. I'm excited by him. I'm excited by the fact that he's fresh. He comes in untainted by the league or by anything else. He can come in and bring a personality. That's the one thing that I've seen this week in his interviews that he's done. I think he's handled the media over in Sporting in Lisbon very well, because he's been in a difficult position, hasn't he? Sort of balancing the loyalty to a club that he's been so good for versus his ambition to move to another club. And I think he's found that right balance. But he's, got a nice way about him in the press conferences. He's got a smile in the press conferences. And, you remember when you're a Manchester United manager, you are the guy that's out front. You're the one that's taking all the questions. Pre-match, post-match, it's you. Nobody else is taking the questions on a continuous basis. You're in that statesman-like position, and you've got to be good at it, because part of your job, or one of the biggest parts of your job, is handling the external media and connecting and communicating to us, to the fans, and to everybody in the country and the world. So that's a big part of his job, and he looks like he can handle that. But it's a huge step up for him. I mean, what a massive challenge. But it looks like a great one for him, and he's young enough to be enthusiastic about it.
We need to move on, but I can't help myself. I want to ask you this question about the humanity of the situation, because one of the things that's been said about him is that he's a loving family man. He's got a balanced life, life-work balance and all of that
That'll
stuff.
change.
Well, that's what I'm coming to ask you, because I was thinking Sir Alex Ferguson, the greatest here, we knew loved his wine and he loved his racehorses. He had things and he loved his wife.
But he was also obsessive.
But he was
with
obsessive.
His job.
Is it going to be? Can you be the Manchester United manager and still be, quotes, normal?
Look, they're all a little bit crazy, these top managers, when you look at them. I mean, they're all obsessed. They're all obsessive characters. They're a bit crazy. They're a little bit sort of, they're just... I don't know any of them that have a normal life in reality, because they're always thinking about what's going to happen the next day, the next match, the next training session, the next practice. They're always thinking about things. So I suspect he's no different. And look, over in Lisbon and in the Portuguese league, he's achieved big things, but it will be a different kettle of fish for him when he comes to Old Trafford. This club is just gigantic in scale when it comes to just everything about it, whether it's the crowds, whether it's the expectation, whether it's the actual media and communication side, whether it's the commercial demands of being the Manchester United manager with their 50, 60 sponsors who all have a call upon your time and your, the executives, everything, that managing up, managing down. You've got the academy that he'll have to keep an eye on, because Manchester United have got this amazing record of producing academy players. So he's got so much to contend with. But his title is head coach, which is good, that he just can concentrate on getting that first team right. And he really just needs to forget, I hope for the next 8 months, that the club can just stay away from him on as much as the other side as possible, keep him away. That's where Ruud could be quite good for him in terms of dealing with some of the commercial media side. He won't want to do that, Ruud, but he could handle that for him and take a lot of pressure and weight away while he concentrates solely on getting this group of players that the club have recruited into a good place. Because that's the biggest problem that United have at this moment in time, is first team performance. So he can have a balance, but it's going to be a stretch for him in his first 8 months, year and a half, 2 years, because there's just such a big demand here.
Yeah. If you're finished on Manchester United,
I think so.
We'd better wrap up the rest, hadn't we?
Yeah.
Starting, of course, with Chelsea. What did you make of Chelsea today?
I was disappointed in them. Yeah, because do you know what? This is the third game I've watched Chelsea play this season. First game of the season against City, the game at Anfield, and I actually thought they were better in those two games than they were here because they were playing against good sides. And I thought that they really did well at Anfield and contributed to a really good game. At City, first game of the season, next night went on Monday Night Football and predicted that Chelsea would get into the top four. I just thought today, and I think Maresca will feel this deep down, whether he says it in his press conference or not. And I think Chelsea fans that travelled over in that far corner will go home thinking, we should have gone and done that. We should have gone and won that game. Teams have come here and won it that are nowhere near as good as Chelsea. So I think they'll be a little bit disappointed. And when I say disappointed, I'm obviously a United fan, but from a Chelsea fan for 5 minutes, which I will be, I think that they should think that they could have done a lot better in this match. And that they'll be disappointed with, I think, Madueke. I think they'll be disappointed with Neto. I think they'll be disappointed with Mudryk. I think Cole Palmer didn't have his best game. Jackson was as quiet as I've seen. So I think the forward players will probably feel like they could have contributed so much more in this game. And they were scrappy at times. And look, they make the mistake for the goal, but that can happen. But they should really have scored 2 or 3 here at Old Trafford. United weren't very good at all, were they? And I just thought Chelsea were below par. I've actually liked them more in the other 2 games that they've done when they've lost, believe it or not, against City and Liverpool. I thought today I was a little bit disappointed with them because the expectation for me today was that if United were like they've been, which they were, you can just go and beat them. You know, some quick passes, a little bit of quality, cross when they've got it, you're in. You'll just score. And I'm surprised that they didn't when they equalised. Great goal from Caicedo. I'm surprised they didn't go and win the game. I thought that was, if I'm Chelsea, if I'm Maresca, I'm going on with that coach or playing and thinking, we're not quite ready. We know they're not quite ready. I'm not talking about quite ready to go and win a big game and just go and sort of just turn the screw a little bit. So yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed, but you know, they're young enough. They're on a journey. We know that they can improve, and they've been better than that. But I think there was just a little bit of a sort of. There'll be a regret going back on that sort of journey to London tonight, I think.
I'm disappointed also, perhaps, because in the context of this weekend and the narrative of the Premier League, this was a chance. Villa dropped points. Arsenal lost, Manchester City lost. It's all mixed up in this top 4, 5, 6. What did you make of all of yesterday's events?
Yeah, and I think Chelsea will feel like they really have a strong chance of getting into the top 4, and that's why I think they'll be disappointed now. But it's a long way to go, and they still could do that. Oh, yesterday was a little bit mad, wasn't it? I mean, Arsenal are in a difficult moment, but one that I don't think's terminal in terms of the actual league title. I think that if you're going to win a league title, and look, I don't sit here right now thinking Arsenal are out of the league title, that this is them sort of, if you like, going back. I think, might be naive, might be in sat here in 3 months saying I was completely wrong. This might be what this team need to actually, to be fair, make them go on a massive run and go and win a league title, because they'll be looking at Liverpool and they'll be looking at City and thinking, they're not quite perfect. They're not as what they were 3 or 4 years ago. This is a big chance. What are we doing? Wake up. Give ourselves a little, slap round the face, because they are making mistakes, and there is an element of them just feeling a little bit sorry for themselves that they've got a few injuries. We're not interested. Come on, you're going to win the league title. This is where you become a hero. It's where you become Arsenal legends. No one's interested in whether you've basically got a few injuries for a part of the season. Those players will come back. Don't wait for them. So, yeah, they've had some tough games. I get that. Going to Newcastle's tough. I sort of thought they scored a great goal, Newcastle. But Arsenal, at this moment in time, there are big questions being asked, but I don't rule them out of winning the title. I still have them winning the title, and this might be what they need to win the title. And I might look completely and utterly stupid, and there'll be people playing this back to me, this clip, in 3-4 months saying, what the hell were you talking about? But I feel most connected to a title race, and I always think about what a team needs to go through to win a title. And sometimes, City aren't quite right, Liverpool aren't perfect. You sometimes just need this little bit of a serious blip, really. It's been a poor start for them, really, in terms of where you would have expected them to be. But they could go on a run. They could get the players back post-international break, go on a run, and they could be very dangerous towards, hit your form March, April, May. That's when you really want to be flying. It's not a problem now as long as they do start.
It's fireworks coming up, isn't it?
Sorry. But obviously, you've got to make sure you're in touch with Arsenal and with City and Liverpool, which I think they will be. I think that they'll get close to them over Christmas, and I think they'll be involved in the title race. City, yeah, I mean, what a run they've been on. I mean, even in the last couple of minutes, I think Foden shot, then it just went past the post, and I think Haaland had one where he just scuffed it against the post. So you always think. I was at Salford thinking when they scored the first goal, City, I thought they're going to definitely be 2-2. They always get something out of it, and they didn't do for once. But I wouldn't sort of, again, jump down their throats and say that's disaster for them. They're not the same. I think from the treble-winning team of a couple of years ago, I think they're regressing slightly from where, they are regressing from where they were, because that's the highest level you can ever get to. And it looks like they're just not quite there, but they have got injuries as well. So, a time of the season that, to be fair, going back 15, 20 years when we were going for titles, we'd almost, he'd almost be talking to us about, he'd be saying, you're just bored, aren't you? You're just waiting for February, March to come along when you get excited. We'd almost be in this period of the season. We would lose a game. We would draw a game. We would sort of not be playing well at certain points, and you have a few injuries, and it'd be a little bit meh, a little bit, like that game was today. But that's not been allowed in this last few years because of Pep Guardiola's standards. I think this season might be a little bit like the previous, decades where you've been allowed to lose a game or two and still get away with it and still be in with a chance in the title race. So Liverpool's a great weekend for them, and they've had a really good start. I think Arne Slot saw his interview about how they played in the first half against Brighton wasn't brilliant, and they did better in the second half. So, look, there's a lot to play for. I still think Arsenal, City are obviously in it, but I still think Arsenal are very much in it as well.
And by the way, perhaps we should say, you might want to say that you can't afford to be bored at Bournemouth, can you? That has become the graveyard for the superstars, and they were, if I may say so, very, very good yesterday.
We need that, don't we? We need that place that's difficult to go to, 10, 11, 12,000 fans, where you just think, ooh, a little bit awkward, you know what I mean? We need them types of grounds in the Premier League. We need those games of football where a smaller club can go and beat the big clubs. There's been less of that, I think, in the last few years. So when City get beat at Bournemouth, it should make us all smile. Because, we would get beat at grounds like that 10, 15 years ago, and you felt like the whole country was celebrating against you, because that was what football is and was in this country, that everyone can beat each other, and we need to make sure we maintain that. So, Bournemouth have done fantastically well. I mean, the results they've had in the last few weeks have been sensational.
Great stuff. Well, that's been this weekend. Chelsea-Arsenal next.
Yeah, look forward to that.
Cheers, Gary.
Thank you.